Good afternoon. I'm Pavita Howe, Vice President of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at BioNJ. Thank you for joining us for this very timely program. As we know, AI is rapidly changing the way we do things in the workplace. The impact in the life sciences industry has been both rapid and significant, and a lot is yet to be discovered and developed. Over the next 90 minutes, our panel of experts will share insights into how they are assessing the landscape and leveraging AI and cutting-edge technology to drive innovation, expand access, and enhance patient outcomes. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our hardworking planning committee who helped to bring this program forward. A special shout out to our committee chair, CEO of Bayesian Biotech and BioNJ board member, John Mackey, and co-chair, Senior Vice President, Global Head of Data Science and AI for GenMab, Hisham Hamadeh. I'd also like to share some information on a recently announced collaboration between BioNJ and Tech Council Ventures, established to foster innovation in the life sciences sector, including digital health, biotech, medical devices, and therapeutics. By combining BioNJ's network and dedication to patient access with Tech Council Ventures' investment expertise, this partnership has the potential to create significant opportunities for early-stage companies to thrive and expand in New Jersey. To learn more, please visit bionj.org or contact Jane Dela Cruz at Tech Council Ventures at jane@techcouncilventures.com. Please feel free to share this exciting opportunity with companies that might benefit from it. And please reach out to us if you are interested or if you are in the process of fundraising, as we would be happy to introduce you to our partners at Tech Council Ventures. Okay, so now let's get the program started. We have some wonderful and extremely knowledgeable panelists with us this afternoon. If you have questions for our speakers, you can type them into the Q&A box, and we will try to get to all of them at the end of the presentation. We do have a packed house this afternoon, so if we don't get to your questions, we will follow up with you after the program. And now, please welcome our moderator to introduce our panel of experts and lead our discussion, seasoned AI specialist and technologist from Google Cloud, Kiran Dattani. Kiran, take it away.
Awesome. Hey, hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Kiran Dattani. Very happy to be here. And to the entire BioNJ team, thank you very much for this opportunity. And, while we talk about AI and everything, let me start off by saying, I always love mining the patent database. Just I'm obsessed with what patents were given out today. So a day in a history today, September 26th, there was a patent given out for instant mashed potatoes. So this was the day that we actually got the patent to instant mashed potato. And then at the same time, today happens to be also the second pancake day. That is basically, a world-renowned holiday where people enjoy pancakes everywhere. And the third thing that caught my attention was this was also a day that Levi's actually got a patent for the riveted buttons. So I kind of find it very interesting that everything that would actually prevent you from fitting into those great jeans were all kind of correlated today. So with a little bit of that, I think I personally, with where I sit in Google Cloud, I have a distinct opportunity to speak with and work with many of the world leading organizations in life sciences and pharmaceuticals, especially as they think about cloud transformation and AI. And in terms of what I have seen in the space is we at Google, as Sundar, our fearless leader, often refers to, is we have a once in a generational opportunity to unlock human potential with AI. The onus is on all of us to say, how can we do this equitably and how can we do this for everyone everywhere in the world? Gen AI fundamentally is actually changing the way we interact with technology, right? So basically, just think about what has changed in the last 18 to 24 months. There's a significant shift that's happened. One statistic, actually, another data point, because I love data, is just imagine how long did it take for 50 million airline passengers. So let's say, imagine, transporting or going somewhere with an aircraft was something that one wanted to do, and said, like, 50 million people, how long did it take for 50 million people to use airplanes to go from one place to another? It took them 68 years. How long it took for us to get to 50 million internet users? About 7 years. And now comes the fun fact. How long did it take to get 50 million users to Gen AI? It literally took 5 weeks. In 5 weeks, we had about more than 50 million users of Gen AI. So obviously, AI has a potential to revolutionize everything that we as humanity aspire to be, and help humans achieve the impossible, assist them, empower them, and also help them to reach their fullest potential. The same applies to healthcare, right? Because in terms of AI, what can it do for healthcare? While we have to be very, very much by nature, by design in healthcare, have to be evidence based, scientifically grounded, there is tremendous potential for us to unleash and start thinking about what experiences can we enable for everybody in the healthcare value system with AI. So fundamentally, today I'm very, very happy that the panelists that you're going to be hearing from today, we're basically going to talk about four pillars where AI can enhance the experience for healthcare. So the four pillars that I see is, leaving the tech aside, we have the large language models, we have models of all sizes. But at the end of the day, what are these AI and Gen AI experiences going to do for patients, providers, regulators, and knowledge workers? Our anchoring is going to be around that. So we are actually going to try to get into the discussion with our panelists here, where we are going to talk about how are all these experiences getting AI enabled. So it's my distinct pleasure to basically invite our panelists here. So we'll start with Sami Kazmi from BMS, and then we'll go to Scott Ogden, and then we'll talk with Troy. So if I can request all my panelists to do a quick introduction, and then we can jump into the questions.
Sure. So I can start. Thank you, Kiran, and thank you, BioNJ and the Pavita and team for this, for inviting us, and for feel really honored to be talking about this very important topic, as Kiran said. And I'm looking forward to hearing from Kiran how AI might transform the mashed potato experience, right? We should talk about that. I think there is a startup there somewhere. So I work for BMS. I am part of the digital health team here at BMS, mostly focused on the cardiovascular and neuroscience, neuropsychiatry, therapeutic areas. But we don't, it's a small team, and we don't have very strong swim lanes. So before this, I've done similar roles at Novartis and Amgen, technologist at heart, came from the consumer technology space. So I bring the sensibility of everything has to be done at warp speed, and hey, we got to make Christmas sales, and that kind of sensibility that's sometimes lacking in the pharma business. So it comes, I have a special, understanding of how transformative AI can be as a technology. So that's me.
Awesome. We'll go to Scott next.
Hey, everyone, and so grateful to be here too, representing GenMab. My name is Scott, and I lead GenMab's AI Innovation Lab. My background is all over the healthcare industry. I was in managed care, Medicaid, and health systems, hospital systems, doing similar things, leading data science and AI innovation teams. And what we do for GenMab, and GenMab is an end-to-end biotech company, and we endeavor to support end-to-end from early discovery, clinical development, commercial manufacturing with data science and AI. And whether that be transforming how business users interact with these services, or building products ourselves, or partnering with outside startups and companies like that, we're sort of all takers here, and happy to connect with anyone offline if they fit into any of those buckets afterwards. So thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Welcome, Troy.
Thank you, Kieran. It's great to be here, especially with my co-panelists who, interestingly, Johnson & Johnson has partnerships with everyone here. So it's great to connect on the panel with BioNJ, but also to be part of this important community we work in, delivering medicines and technologies to patients. So I'm the Chief Commercial Data Science Officer at Johnson & Johnson Innovative Medicine. And I cover all of our therapeutic areas, and I have a span over a variety of spaces, including data science and AI ML, real-world evidence, digital health, precision medicine, and of course, data, which fuels everything we do. So really looking forward to the conversation today.
Awesome. Thank you very much for all our wonderful panelists. So I think we'll jump right into some of the questions, which I truly believe will inspire a lot of thought-provoking ideas in the attendees, as well as, my objective here is the line of questions today is more to talk about the detailed experiences that these world-renowned organizations that our panelists represent. They'll talk about what has worked, what has not worked, and where are the gaps. And I think that's kind of what we want to focus in on. So with that, I would actually first go to Sami at BMS. I had a question for you to reflect a little bit on how is BMS leveraging AI to enhance patient and provider experience, if you can reflect on that.
Yeah, so at BMS, we put the patient as to all the pharma companies that my esteemed panelists belong to or represent. We put the patient at the center of everything, right? So it's ultimately about patient. We also believe that our tech should be as transformational as our medicines, right? So I feel like we are leaders in adopting AI and all the latest technologies across the pharma value chain. So whether in drug discovery, it's like coupling the latest advances in computational calculations with our chemists and scientists, or we are or coupling AI-powered kind of predictive algorithms with the expertise and intuition that physicians bring. We've invested significant resources in transforming each of the stakeholder experience, right? And we continue to evaluate, assess, develop solutions that can transform both the patient and the provider experience. And therefore, ultimately, the aim is to lead to better patient outcomes. The best way I can illustrate is give an example of a project that's near and dear to my heart because I was responsible for it. Was we have a special interest in structural heart disease, such as cardiomyopathies, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy being one of them. And one of my, which is also a super undiagnosed disease. It's diagnosed too late and this is also one of the leading causes of sudden death in athletes and the young people because it's undetected, they're asymptomatic, and it can have very serious consequences. So we start with what's the problem to solve here for each of our therapeutic areas, because we are pretty much a lot of our focus is on product plus. So we have a paradigm changing solution, a drug, Camzyos, that was launched that can treat cardiomyopathy. The standard of care was surgery eventually. So once we've launched that, we start looking at what kind of transformational technology we can bring to the table that will change the path of the disease, that will lead to earlier diagnosis and therefore better outcomes because there'll be earlier treatment. And we worked with a company called VizAI, and some of you may have seen some of the press around that. Developed an algorithm which can screen for cardiomyopathy, AI-based algorithm in ECGs. That's hard to pick up by a human. There's subtle signs that can show up in an ECG, which is done very, very commonly. The ultimate diagnostic is in echocardiograms, which are done relatively only if you go to a cardiologist or if there's a big reason. That's why it gets underdiagnosed. And it's a very specialized electrocardiogram you have to do technically as well to get the right diagnosis. In an ECG, if you can easily screen for a high likelihood of HCM, then and use AI to also optimize the workflow, meaning get that suspicion of HCM to a physician who knows what to do with it, right? Because this is again a specialized physician. So maybe doing that to optimize both the diagnosis and the screening, as well as to optimize the pathway that the patient has to go through, the patient journey to get to the right treatment, was probably built into the part of the solution. And built it, got it FDA, so Viz AI created the algorithm, got it approved through the FDA, and now they're scaling across multiple hospital systems and continue to scale. They've scaled, the latest numbers I saw from them was they've scaled more than 500,000, screened more than 500,000 patients for HCM already. So it's exciting times, and that can truly transform both the physician experience, who is now feeling like they have the right tools to make an early diagnosis even before a patient is obviously symptomatic, as well as the patient experience, whose ultimate, where the ultimate experience is that they have better outcomes.
Awesome. Thank you very much. What a great example that you just brought up, Sammy. And I think this definitely underscores a point that I often see. We as Google see so many use cases where, especially in life sciences and healthcare, AI is best used as augmented intelligence. And I think this is a great example of that, right? So it's almost like what a doctor could have missed, or what a radiologist could have missed, or what a primary care doctor could have missed in a regular ECG. You actually have an ability, an AI sort of like augmenting the human intelligence. What a great example, and I'm definitely familiar with your CamGeos drug. This is an excellent way to enhance the patient-provider experience. Next, I will head to Scott with a question around what is Genmab's AI strategy, and how do you think it's differentiated from what you believe that could have happened in the age of AI versus what is now? And in terms of how does that contribute to the success of your organization, Scott, if you can talk about that.
That's a great question. I'll lead into a specific example. But first, this era of technology, I think you alluded to, is democratizing. It's the first era of AI where you don't have to be a data scientist or an engineer or an IT professional to get value out of it, right? I think so. The point of highest leverage is being that augmented intelligence for every knowledge worker in the company. Of course, there are individual use cases, and I'm going to go into how we develop those. But if and the story I want to tell is I was in the Netherlands in our discovery lab just 2 days ago. So this is hot off the presses. I didn't know this was happening, but we more than a year ago, we introduced enterprise ChatGPT to the business and been training people and trying to show specific use cases, how to evolve it. One of the scientists there, a non-coder, his team had been spending 80 hours a month managing data from this system to that system. It didn't bubble up to an IT priority to fix it, but still a lot of manual effort. Instead, non-coder, he figured out how to get ChatGPT to write a software program in R, and then even a step further to deploy it as an executable so his team could benefit from it. And this is without me as the AI professional doing anything. And that I think that's the model that we want at Genmab is that we get to the point where everyone can be this. Of course, we want guardrails and we want the right platform. We want to make sure that it's accurate and secure. Absolutely. But that mindset of getting more people to do things like that, it inspired me, candidly. Like the other way around. So that I think is the biggest illustration of what GenMab's AI strategy is. We think, partnering with the frontier labs, I mean, Anthropic, Google, OpenAI, all of them are the way to go. We don't think we're going to build any frontier models that, I mean, we can maybe fine tune stuff, but we don't, we're definitely in the partner play here. Yeah, I think that's the biggest illustration of what I think GenMab is trying to do across the board.
Awesome. Well, what a great example of sort of like making your knowledge worker so much more independent. And this is just such a great example. I think in general, as we talked about, right, like it has to enhance the experience of how you're engaging with technology. And Scott, your example is spot on. I had run into a similar user. They were basically saying that, I'm a finance analyst and I need some help trying to make sense out of some of my revenue forecast. And in my previous job, or in the way I used to work before, I would actually have to depend on how I can actually get some of these changes made to these visualizations and this data mining task. He says, now I can do it all using an LLM, and I can generate the visuals. I can plug it directly into my finance reports, and there you go. Like, I feel the possibilities are endless. At the same time, I think code generation and business friendly sort of environment that this creates, I think it'll kind of unleash a lot. And I think there is a term in healthcare, if you worked around hospitals or clinical system, that you have your knowledge worker perform at the best of their top of their
Top of the
license, right?
license.
So when you think about it, right, so you're kind of helping the knowledge worker. They are focused on a task that they are really good at, and then you can remove some of these obstacles that you see as to sort of like means to get there. Excellent example. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We'll now go to Troy and get a little bit of a feel for how is Johnson and Johnson utilizing AI in the commercial organization, and what has been the impact and efficiency and some outcomes, if you can reflect on. And you can pick commercial organization as well as clinical trials, because I know Troy has a broad background in both these areas. So with
Yeah.
that, Troy.
Yeah, thanks, Kiran. I mean, we've been on this journey like many companies for a few years now, but it's definitely accelerating. For those who don't know, Johnson & Johnson has two major businesses. We have our Johnson & Johnson Innovative Medicine business, which is in the pharmaceutical space, and we have a med tech business, which works in orthopedics and general surgery, cardiovascular disease, and vision care. And across all of these areas, we see AI being adopted from deep early research applications to clinical testing, clinical trials, as you mentioned, to supply chain, to commercialization. So, and it's happening through large partnerships with external firms. It's happening through homegrown efforts that we're developing internally with very talented people, and also through acquisitions. So there's no one way we're getting at the opportunities here, but we're pursuing it from all angles. There's so many examples we can share. Two I'll mention just to get things going at least. One is in the clinical trial space, whether it's early stage clinical studies or late stage or medical affairs studies. The ability now to, it used to be, for example, that we would send out surveys to physicians as investigators to fill out a paper, basically, and say how many patients they see a month with this particular profile. Well, nowadays, we can get that answer ourselves through access to very rich de-identified data of what kind of patients are being seen at this particular potential investigator site. And we can also fine-tune that to make sure that we're getting the right diverse population that we'd like to reflect patients across the nation. And that helps us in getting the right types of patients in our studies, but also much faster. So we're seeing about a 2.5 or higher fold increase in recruitment time. And it's having a really positive benefit of helping us get our medicines to patients faster. On the commercial side, what we've learned over the past few years, and this really accelerated during COVID, was physicians are obviously extremely busy. Healthcare providers do find value in the pharmaceutical industry or the medtech industry, providing them with valuable information that helps them make better decisions for their patients. And so we've built capabilities. We have a worldwide capability in our innovative medicines business called engagement.ai. And this is an engine essentially that ingests all types of healthcare data about prescribers and patients and prescriber behaviors. So we can actually predict what information a provider might want to have at what time and through what channel, maybe in person, maybe in an email, maybe through some other digital channel. So we give them valuable information that works on their schedule. It's the kind of information they're likely to want. And it helps us to make sure that we're providing them with the right information about our product so they can make the best decisions about patients. And the feedback we have from physicians, and generally speaking, is that this is really effective. It's what physicians would like to have. It helps us because we can only go visit so many people and so many providers with our field forces, so we can be more targeted. And it helps us to build that relationship of trust with providers that we can bring them information that's valuable to them through the right channel at the right time. So just two examples of where AI, predictive modeling, access to really rich data has truly enabled our business to be better, faster, stronger.
Awesome, Troy. Thank you very much. What an excellent example of the inclusivity and sort of trying to increase the access, and irrespective of the background of the patient or their socioeconomic status. One other example I see, and again, outside of my day job, I'm a public health researcher, and I'm very much passionate about equity and access. And I feel AI can be a great leveling field, right? To say that, hey, is it a tool to kind of level the playing field, to say, how can we reduce or remove a lot of the bias, all the way from our selection of patients in clinical trials to how the drugs are distributed and handed over. So that's a great perspective. Thank you very much for that. I think
And just to build on that, Karen, just to build on that briefly, being able to do that really requires that we have the right trained people who understand the data and the limitations of it before we get insights and act on those insights, for example. So it all comes back to being very highly trained, deep expertise in data, knowledge about what data we're looking at, what the limitations are, how to use it, and then also where else to look for the type of data that we need to get a more complete picture. So it all comes back to starting with the right ingredients.
Awesome. Thank you very much. What a great perspective. So continue to move on with our line of questioning here. The next question I had for Sammy was, at BMS, what are some of the obstacles that you're finding that is actually preventing you from fully sort of deploying or going all out with AI? The reason for my question is, I'm sure many organizations can benefit from knowing what is slowing you down, because as a technology vendor, as of this morning, we had like more than 110 large language models and models of all sizes available from Google. And while we, as a technology provider, might provide you the necessary tech and the compute and the storage capability to use all that, it'll be very good for us to understand, as well as the participants here to understand, what is slowing you down at BMS to sort of implement AI faster. So Semi, if you can talk about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so it depends on where you are doing the implementation. So for the example that Troy used, he probably can benefit from more data to gather even richer insights, right? And the lack of data in certain cases might be the biggest hurdle. My bigger example or challenge I feel in my day-to-day at BMS is not the technology. The technology is almost in the payer, in the provider space. When you're making tools for physicians, for patients, which is the example I gave you, it's almost never the technology. The technology has matured enough, I feel. I mean, there's still a long way to go, and we'll see some, more and more improvements. But it's mature enough right now that given enough data, a large enough data set, and some smart data scientists, you can almost take for granted that you will come up with some kind of a solution that will have great sensitivity, specificity. There's an evidentiary burden for approving things with the FDA in this space, especially, let's say, if it's a physician-facing clinical decision tool. But that also is kind of manageable. We kind of know how to navigate that, and we know what the expectations are. The bigger problem that I have on a day-to-day, how do I scale? So it is not so much what Google can do for me. It's like, how do I change the entire ecosystem where people are actually using this technology? Because you can have the most thoughtfully designed, the most, reliable, trustworthy tool, but if there is still a fundamental lack of adoption in both the clinical practice as well as if it's a patient-facing tool, patient already with a struggling with the disease burden is now being asked to use more and more technology. How do I scale this? How do I get more people to use it? How do I build the trust with the users that it becomes something that they want and need? The other big piece is who pays for it, right? As pharma, we're doing a lot of the acceleration, a lot of the being the catalyst to transform the space. But for clinical practice, are they getting reimbursed? Are physicians getting reimbursed for this? And what is the reimbursement model in the long term? Is there any policy changes that need to be, does it get into good clinical practice as part of guidelines? Those are the challenges that I think they will get solved as we go along, but a lot more work is needed in the adoption and scaling of these technologies. So it gets in the way of us. We are very careful of what kind of solutions we choose, because it's not only the technical probability of success, it's now, hey, what's the probability of success that people will actually use it, where it actually makes a significant impact into the disease trajectory, right? So into the treatment pathways and lead to outcomes, rather than just becoming a cool kind of science project and a few people use it. And so that to me is the biggest in the area I'm talking about. But as I said, it depends on which area we're using technology in.
Awesome. Thank you very much. What a great perspective, right? This is not something that you invest a lot of money and you can say, okay, let's build it and people will come. This is basically, at the end of the day, this is like a very big change management problem across many stakeholders. And as you rightly said, the physicians and the medical staff is already overburdened. So is the patient and the caregivers, right? Like there's no room to say, use this yet another app or use this yet another step. What a great perspective. Thank you very much. Move on to Scott with a question. Scott, at GenMab and maybe in general, how do you see the role of AI in drug development and some of the operational aspects of bringing the drug to market, of what you may be doing currently at GenMab or what you may aspire to get at?
Yeah, it's what I spend most 80% of my waking hours trying to think about. So, the point of highest leverage, for me, I mean, there's a lot to do in the discovery space, of course, but the clinical development landscape, I think, is the point of highest leverage for this general purpose type technology right now. Because in the biology world, you need to be specialized, but these kind of generic capabilities go a long way with the development pathways. And there's definitely a lot of steps that you could imagine AI playing a role. What we've taken a bet on is some of the documentation, the regulatory documentation, the clinical study reports. And if you don't know what these things are, we can go into them. But the DSURs, INDs, and say this is a point where we spend a significant amount of knowledge work on, and a significant amount of time on. And everybody on the panel knows that, shaving a month off a clinical trial means real patients, hundreds or thousands of real patients in the world getting treated, getting access. So this is, it may sound like a operationally type use, but it actually really is impactful if you can speed these things up. Now, we don't anticipate it being you put something in a model and you get the result, you submit it to the regulator. It's not, but there's always humans, there's always the knowledge worker that you're augmenting, right, with the tool. But that knowledge worker can now go further, do more, be part of the process, maybe execute on more clinical trials. And this is actually the topic, if people are further interested. We're presenting at OpenAI's Dev Day next week. We think that let's close your ears. But we think that a specific technology, and this is where I think the ecosystem of startups can help. AI agents can play a strong role here. And this has not been developed yet. There's lots of frameworks out there. Definitely nothing specific to clinical development or drug development. So we think that if there's more time put here, you could have a lot of leverage on some of these operational issues, where you can go and auto draft these documents, auto draft processes in a way that would take months or even years in the past, and maybe doesn't have to take that anymore. So this is what we're hoping for. It's a bet.
What an excellent topic of discussion, right? At the end of the day, and again, prior to Google Cloud, I worked for 14 years at Pfizer, so I've actually lived through. I think if you look at the time we spend on generating documents and doing a lot of our work, I think the amount of data and amount of documentation we generate, again, we're all blessed to be in a very regulated industry, so there's a lot to generate. But it's a perfect segue into, hey, at the end of the day, there is a possibility that these informed agents can actually start doing some of the classification, summarization, as well as some simplification and translation, right? So it could actually understand an SMPC document and maybe basically generate like a label document, or tell you vice versa, hey, these are the markets that you need to change the labels for a given indication. So thank you very much. What a great perspective. Love it. I think I'll head to Troy next, because I feel that and there's also, in general, these LLMs, especially large LLMs, having a bigger context window doesn't really mean anything if you don't have the right data to put into it. So my question was to Troy, saying, based on where you sit at Johnson and Johnson, uh, data definitely fuels the AI engine in this case, right? So data is the fuel that actually makes the AI experiences come to life. So at J&J, as you're thinking through your data strategy into getting AI out the door faster, what are some of the ethical and regulatory considerations that you actually have seen or drafted that we could benefit from learning on how data can be best used for some of the AI experiences?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually have put out a paper on this topic about ethics in AI. It's incredibly important. There are so many facets to that. And when I say, for example, we need people internally, we have people internally and continue to need people internally who really understand data We also need people who really understand contracting around data, because in order to do this ethically, we need to understand what the limitations of our licenses are if we're licensing data from the outside, or if we're using data that's publicly available under certain terms and conditions. So it's incredibly important to make sure that the data we have access to, we treat very, very carefully. We store it in a secure environment and protect it with controlled access. We don't let just anybody go in and work with data. We train our employees with privacy and security and information security principles. And we only collect true personal information if it's necessary for our purposes and with proper informed consents and so forth. So there's a whole wraparound approach you have to have when you have the privilege of working with data. And in fact, much of the data we work with, they're not just data points, they're people, they're patients behind these data. And so we need to take that very seriously. If we have de-identified data, we need to make sure it stays de-identified. If we're going to build algorithms to do predictive models for finding patients, we need to make sure that those algorithms are trained on diverse enough data sets that we're not just going to a non-representative part of the population for a trial or for commercialization or for any algorithm development. So there's many, many aspects of this. Even when we think about building new technologies in the engineering space, where robotic technologies continue to advance, making sure that those models are trained on diverse patient populations and that the operating rooms that are evolving to be able to take in those digitally powered AI-enabled surgical devices, that they're designed and curated with the right inputs to make sure that we have the right technology that can treat patients appropriately from, independent of their background. So hugely important topic. It's not an easy one though, because it requires it's a continuous effort. It's not, yeah, we're done, this algorithm is done, it's complete, we can lock it and finish it. It really is a continued evolution of understanding limitations and continuing to try to resolve those limitations over time.
Awesome. No, I think thank you very much, and I think I may want to double down on the consent aspect that you talked about, right? Because it's when you gather data, you have to make sure that you have the right to use it in the way that you currently know, and if you are trying to stretch that, you actually have to get some consent. And once again, I feel that privacy and consent is very, very important in this space, and especially in healthcare and life sciences, because as we all know, there is tremendous amount of complex ecosystem where this data is moving around. It's moving from the provider to the hospital systems to outpatient to actual patient augmenting that data. The question is, you got to maintain visibility as well as governance across all of those. So I definitely think the consent piece, I just want to highlight that as that's a very important aspect. And also, what are you entitled to use? I think you reflected on the licensing. I definitely believe that that's a very good point as well, because it's often overlooked. Just because you paid for a license to data doesn't give you a right to use that data outside of what you licensed it for.
It can get very tricky too, exactly to that point. You might have let's say company A, they license data from a health system with certain terms and conditions. Company A then sublicenses that data to company B, and they have an agreement between company A and company B. Company B needs to understand under what terms and conditions did company A license that data from the health system so that they don't violate any original use intent for that data. So this can go on. The data space is very complicated. So having people who can navigate this and help make sure we're making the right decisions is critically important. It's important for all companies who work with data and who want to create models and LLMs Otherwise, things can come to an unfortunate and fast end if there are problems that you run into or you didn't know about before the diligence.
Awesome. Thank you. What a great perspective, and this is definitely very informative. So for my next question, I'll go to Simi again. Simi, as you look through right now, I'm sure there are many tech vendors in the AI space, but there is a lot of opportunity that I see where there is tremendous amount of startup activity. So if you had to pick one or two areas right now where you believe that certain aspects of solutioning or accelerators that these startups can bring to an organization like BMS, what would be those areas like? Like, where do you see the role of nimble, faster, innovative thinking startups, and how do you see them sort of helping BMS go even faster at what you're trying to achieve?
Um, It's a good question. As I said, it's often not the technology, right? These days, what we're looking for to accelerate the space is more the change management of the ecosystem. So what startups, when we evaluate, for example, we get a lot of startups as well as companies pitching to us. What we have started to evaluate is their competence in doing and helping us being the right partner for the change management, for the adoption of these technologies. Are they also focused on building trustworthy and evidence-based solutions? Are the models and solutions there, are the solutions that they're using, especially in this generative AI any generative AI use case, are they built on the data sets with the right diversity in the data sets? Because we get a lot of startups talking about predicting disease in all kinds of disease areas, right? And disease manifests itself very differently in different, based on genotype, based on ethnicity. There's a lot of diversity in how the disease manifests itself, therefore how it should be treated and what should be the progression. So we always worry about that, right? Also starting to worry recently more about how does it handle the nuances and the edge cases, right? So when a startup has a solution, is there a thought given to not how the majority is handled, but as much precision as possible, because it makes a big difference, because nuance is a human trait, right? So that is a human superpower where we understand nuances and so critical in clinician decision making, right? So more recently, we are also worrying about model collapse. As the technology matures and with generative AI, will future generations of generative AI get faced with the data where the newer versions are being trained on AI generated data rather than human generated data, and therefore we know now there's plenty of evidence to say that eventually the outcomes are not as reliable as based on human generated data or algorithms trained on human generated data or models trained on human generated data. So when we evaluate what startups can help us accelerate, if they have given thought to a lot of these areas of concern for us, where we feel like overcoming some of these challenges, building the trust and adoption of the technology, building the evidence base, if there is real serious thought and an attempt to address, not everything will be addressed. But that's when we get more interested in the partnership. Right? As I said, the technology that you can predict data with this much sensitivity and this much specificity, that's becoming less and less important. It's like, what else can we partner in with the real things that the ecosystem is struggling with for adoption of AI?
Awesome. What a great perspective. And I completely agree, right? It's not just about what the model is predicting. You also want to know the label of the model, what has gone into basically training the model. And you want to make sure that that data has enough diversity represented so that you can get to it. I think that's an excellent point. And it's the one that's not often coming to the discussion, right? Because again, having been around many startups, I can tell you they're all basically probably looking to solve something very niche, bring it to market. But I think knowing how BMS like organization would evaluate them, I'm sure that they could be better prepared when
Yeah,
they
we
pitch to you.
are assessing federated learning solutions and looking to see how do we really make this easy to bring in diversity in some of our data sets, therefore better adoption, faster adoption, just as an example. So, and usually the algorithms I've seen in the disease detection prediction kind of space where they want to pick up a signal is based on a very narrow data set that a particular institution has, right? And so it's less representative of the global population that we aim to serve. So
No, thank you very much. What a great perspective. I think this is so valuable. I think my next question, I'll go to Scott. Scott, in terms of when you are sort of obviously very deeply involved in the research side with the AI initiative at GenMab, when somebody comes to you saying, "Hey, I have a new vertically trained or a very specialized model that is X times better than what is already known," and again, we're going to get to that, right? Because currently, as you see, there's a whole family of generic models, but then there are going to be an evolution of task-specific models, as well as some of them are going to be medically trained. And that is important because we want to basically get the model that's not just the biggest model, but the most appropriate model. Can you talk a little bit about what are you looking at within your organization when you're evaluating this whole flurry of startups who are basically starting to bring new models to the market, and how do you go about evaluating and adopting them?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those keep you up at night kind of questions, right? I think first and maybe primary is that we need the competency internally to actually evaluate it. We can't rely on slides. We need to know, we need to have people who's, when they say we've taken this protein model and improved its performance by fine-tuning it in a lab, right? We need to know, we need to have someone internally who's actually knows what that protein model does, right? Like, and because they are capable. That doesn't mean we build everything, but that person, that knowledge expert on the data science there is crucial to making that decision. Same thing with any of the verticals, clinical or translational. We having that inbuilt capability, like, yeah, that's so we need to be able to talk shop, right, with the CTO of the company. The next thing I'd say is I don't think enterprises like ours need another bolt-on API or data silo. And if you come to us with that, it's going to make it a lot harder. We already have enough of those that we're trying to struggle with internally. So don't have your system be the spot where we have to do analytics. That's going to make, we're not going to, it's going to be much harder. Like, work with us, like, have it be part of our ecosystem. We've spent a lot of time optimizing analytics and data science internally, right? Because we know it works, but we still want to work with people who are competent in that space. The same, and the tech is changing so much that we can't count on like a monolith, like, I don't know, like an SAP, like that's not going to exist in this space. That it's just not. We have to be more dynamic and agile than that. So that's just sort of how we do it.
Awesome. I think, Scott, you hit on a great point, right? We're dealing with a technology that's radically different than what we have dealt with in the past. And so does our evaluation frameworks. Our ability to assess what's working, what's not working has to evolve as well. And I think your point about, hey, don't just come to me with something that is very specific to your offering. You need to fit within my ecosystem. I think that's a great point, because again, we really don't need yet another of something. We need something that will work with what we have. So great perspective. I think that's really a very good thing for us to know. My next question would actually go to Troy, a little bit about, as you are closer to, let's say, the commercial area, there is a lot of activity that generally goes through a lot of like content management, audience segmentation, or even some of the targeting that needs to happen from a go-to-market perspective. How do you see right now that J&J is doing some of these activities in terms of adopting AI data-driven decision making into your commercial organization? Would appreciate if you can reflect on that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's Semi commented on this earlier about workflow, and I think for startups, companies trying to get into a customer relationship partnership, my advice is to really spend the time to understand what those businesses are trying to do and how they work. And it's very, very different depending on if you want to partner with an R&D organization in pharmaceuticals. And is it the discovery team? Is it the development team? Or is it with the med tech team? Is it with the commercial team? Which team in commercial? And even in healthcare, if you're trying to work with a hospital and hospital system, you really have to understand their workflow, what EHR they use, what's going to make life easier for people you expect to use that technology. I have a good friend who's a cardiologist, and he told me, he said, I can't even tell you the number of companies that have come to me with a cool app that help identify a patient or help keep a patient on treatment. And it never gets any traction because it requires me to leave my workflow of the day and go to some other tool that I'm not going to have time to do at 8 o'clock when I'm trying to just get home. So I think understanding workflow is really, really important. Specifically in the commercial organization, I'll give you an example of where this has worked really well for us. Competitive intelligence and understanding the dynamics of a therapeutic space is really challenging today, especially, for example, in a space like oncology. There are thousands of targets. There are dozens of modalities to go after those targets. There are dozens, sometimes hundreds of assets going after those targets. So if we want to do an analysis of all of the assets currently in clinical development for lung cancer, down a certain particular pathway, the company's working on it, the modalities being pursued, the stages of development of those assets, it's a massive amount of work for an individual. And this in the past has been done largely manually. And you can imagine the people hours spent putting something like that together, which by the time you think you have a full picture, it's probably out of date. So we had a company approach us a few years ago, actually a local New Jersey startup called Cognitic, who had built an AI model in this space. And we've been partnering with them for a couple of years now, and it has dramatically shifted how we work as a company. I will say, one learning, and this is true for any technology adoption, getting people to train and spend time to get used to using the tool and changing their workflow is really, really important. So you have to understand their workflow, how they get things done. And then if you really want to try to disrupt, or you got to figure out a way to get it into their workflow. And so that's something that sometimes requires a lot of elbow grease and training and workshops and just spending time with people to adopt new technology. But ultimately, if it's something that is going to be creating value for those people and it can fit in their workflow once they adopt it, then you could really have a winner. So there's no shortage here for startups to not just think about the technology they're producing, but how is it going to land in an organization and how are you going to make it easy for people to use? So it's a super exciting space where I think probably all of us on this panel are bombarded by exciting ideas every week, and most we just can't pursue. But we do find real gems that somehow get our attention and stand out, and we get behind and try to drive their adoption within our companies because we truly believe in them.
Wow, this is so good, and I think you're sort of if I had to replay a little bit of what you're saying of how it's not just about having a way they've solved the problem, but if you don't know already, understand how you fit in the workflow. And I think I definitely believe that your observation about your cardiologist friend being bombarded with, hey, you use this yet another tool. And then I work with a lot of clinical frontline workers, and they're already bogged down, like
Yeah,
45% of their time is getting spent on basically documenting things in the EHR and doing all the surrounding tasks. And now, if you're going to burden them with something else, it's either not going to really enhance their productivity, but sort of like bog them down a little bit
right.
more. And I think the ability to say, hey, you want to bring me some real efficiency, fit within my workflow. I think that's a great insight
And
to work
it's
with.
actually this is recognized nationally as an issue in our country because data integration and digital architecture is a problem across healthcare. I mean, we've all probably experienced it with ourselves or families being patients in the national system, which is very, very strong in many, many ways, but interoperability is not necessarily one of them. So the National Academy of Medicine has actually taken this on as a task. I'm fortunate to be part of a couple of work streams, and there will be a manuscript coming out in the next few months, actually focused on generative AI adoption in healthcare in the United States, where we're trying to lay out a bit of a roadmap here. And there's another work stream on digital and data architecture nationally that we're working on recommendations. And this is the way that it'll have to be changed. There is a need for national level integration of work of infrastructure and architecture for data flows to be better and faster and more linked for the benefit of patients at the end of the day, so their data can be shared with multiple physicians more quickly, faster diagnoses, faster time to get on the right treatment, better outcomes, and probably ultimately lower cost of care for nationally and individually for patients. So it's an important mission that we are all on, trying to accelerate the change here.
Awesome. Thank you very much. What a wonderful perspective. I think there's a very interesting question here that I'm seeing, which might be something that we should touch on because this is, again, it's in the news every day, and rightly so. It is around cybersecurity risk and challenges, right? Because we've all been there, where you're often as a senior leader in your organization, you're often onto a CISO briefing, and the first thing that you hear most times is, "Hey, just make sure don't do anything that we are on a front page of Wall Street Journal or New York Times," as we all represent very complex organizations, tremendous amount of sort of risk that we have to mitigate and protect ourselves against, right? So I'll just kind of go to Simi again from a BMS perspective. As you are thinking about your AI strategy, what are your cybersecurity sort of like concerns, responsibilities that you see that BMS is facing in this space? And I'll have the same question for all of us because I feel that this is a very important topic.
Yeah, I think this is across the industry, across all industries actually, where um, cybersecurity, privacy challenges, all of these uh, are we are held to a much higher standard ourselves. We hold ourselves to a higher standard. The law holds us to a higher standard. So, as part of the rapid adoption and of AI technologies across the value chain, one of the first things that BMS did was beef up our cybersecurity guidelines, principles, SOPs, processes, to now have a very clear focus on how do you handle when there's kind of the newer technologies are coming along. So I'm giving a fairly general answer, but it starts with just being aware of the new challenges that are emerging. When we choose our partners, it is with great due diligence. I think that becomes one of the key things that the startups that we work with struggle with sometimes. And there's a lot of education that we do. We send in our own people to not only do audits, but also to act as some of taking them along on our journey as well. It's not just with security; it's with ethics and compliance and similar kind of initiatives. So I think it's just having the awareness of the responsibility, that this is a special responsibility when we are talking about patient data, right? So that's where it starts, and the processes that you put in and the tools you put in just follow.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Scott, the same question to you. What are your views on this area?
Yeah, I mean, just copy and paste whatever Seema says, but I'll see if I can add to it, if I can. I think it starts with culture, like everything. And part of that is our CISO and our North American security lead are two of my best partners, friends at GenMab. And when we took some of these big AI initiatives, it wasn't just the AI team proposing this and then, InfoSec trying to govern. It was a joint proposal where we try to be sure that we're joined at the hip across the board. It's not like they don't know anything that we're doing and vice versa. So then that can lead into the right, governance structures, the right committees, and not just committees to rubber stamp or but who actively are engaged with the most current technology capabilities, maybe my end, more on the governance frameworks on the CISO end, but where you can bring together these insights and say, what is the path forward? I think, and that way we can deliver the right shades of gray for the organization. And I don't think, and we don't want to be, we don't want to expose risk, but we also don't want to just label AI as excessive risk without, understanding, is it adding risk, or is it just kind of a normal technology? In some cases, I think it is adding risk. In some cases, it is sort of just like a typical technology evaluation. We have to make sure they can handle have the right certifications, and they can guarantee data loss prevention, all the things that you do. So if you start with the culture, I think you can get the right frameworks so that your evaluation of vendors goes faster than, and we're not stuck in committee, and we can know where our boundaries are a priori to the discussions, like nope, or we can say, yep, we here's the path, and it doesn't get lost in a limbo of governance. So that's what I'll add.
So no, I think great point that it's not that you go to these groups when you need them, but you're joined at the hip, and I think it's definitely makes a lot of sense. Troy, anything you want to double click or add on that is a nuance at J&J that you've seen has worked well in this space as you see as your preview around data and some of these technologies?
Yeah, Semi and Scott's comments are very relevant for J&J as well. And we have corporate level security to help us with cyber threats, which are constant. We, of course, have very important patient information we need to protect. We have employee information we need to protect, financial information, and quite frankly, critically important proprietary intellectual property that we need to protect. So there needs to be really deep corporate engagement, and there is in our companies. But what I'd add is this is actually also a team sport. every individual in the company is responsible for this. We probably many companies like ours, we actually get duped emails that try to trick us to click on them. And if you don't click on them and you report it as a suspicious email, you get a gold star and a pat on the back because they want to train us. I think there's something like over 300 billion emails that go around the world just every day. It feels like many of those go through my inbox every day, but it's it's a real challenge for a company not to shut down communication, flow of data to do the analytics we need to do and allow us to move at the speed we want to move, but have the right safeguards in place with the right security and protections and make sure that there's not some code sneaking into our systems that are going to take us down. So this is a 24/7 nonstop effort that probably many people have sleepless nights over in ways that we don't even appreciate in the day jobs we have, because in the privacy and security space, it's a constant 24/7 effort to protect corporations and other entities.
Awesome. And thank you very much. That's definitely true, right? And if you think about it, right, the threat has to only get it right once versus our protection shield has to protect us all the time, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm sure
and just
Google has to manage a fair amount of
yes,
traffic and emails.
yes, we are definitely at the forefront of it, and I can definitely tell you with my little bit of my security experience with some of our largest customers is that we're actually sort of eating our own dog food in this space, where we are actually applying our Gemini models to improve things that can actually protect our own infrastructure as well as our customers, right? So if you think about our use in SecLM and the work that we are doing by implementing Gemini in the security space, we're doing it diligently all the way to start from inspecting the code to say what are the vulnerabilities, how do you actually do security incident management, identify some network access patterns which can actually raise a red flag automatically to say, hey, this cannot be like a human activity, this is some malicious code trying to sort of put your IP at risk or put your data at risk, right? And that's a perfect use case for some of these LLMs and Gen AI type of activities, where these capabilities can now be applied to security to sort of automate some of the workflows that these CISOs and security and threat groups are going through, because they're spending tremendous amount of time trying to do this and they need help as well. So definitely, cyber is a big focus at Google, and as you know, we have a very comprehensive sort of offering and services around our own security suite of tools. Plus, we also have Mandiant, which is basically a very comprehensive set of security, incident threat management, and a whole suite of security services offering. And again, I've had a pleasure of seeing recently two implementations where we actually took those through. And I can definitely tell you that no amount of security analysts are going to be able to scale to protect with the amount of threats that this industry is facing. And I'm sure you've seen of all those ransomwares around, hey, you're locked in, the hospitals are coming, being held hostage. So we definitely don't want that. So I feel that in this space, definitely the due diligence and the security posture is very important. To Scott's point, I'll definitely tell you culture matters very much, and his point about being joined at the hip. It's not just when I need to bring in a new vendor, but it's continuous effort, right? That's kind of what it is.
We have a joke, Kiran, that it will almost always take longer for the due diligence than the actual project. So, the amount of scrutiny every new project gets in the technology space by all our enabling functions and the experts in those enabling functions using all the tools, the latest tools that companies like you are producing.
Yeah.
It's become one of those things where we go, okay, first let's make sure that the timelines reflect the due diligence stage. So we are trying.
Definitely. So I think with that, most of the scheduled programming is sort of like covered at this point. I would like to hand it over to the BioNJ leadership to sort of bring us home here, and then time permitting, we will take some additional questions or closing thoughts. So with that, Randy or anybody from the BioNJ team.
So Kieran, there is another question here that we didn't get to yet, so maybe I can read that out. When it comes to making go or no-go decisions on moving an asset forward, how is this decision made? And how do you think AI can help make these decisions more data-driven and informed? So if anybody has thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think maybe start with Scott on this one, please, definitely, and then others can chime in. Scott, do you want to take this one on?
Yeah, I think recently you saw OpenAI's stab at reasoning, right? With their O1 preview model. And this is the first. I mean, it's imperfect, but it is interesting. And so how do we get a development reasoner model, right? I think is the when you make these decisions, it's internal expertise, it's external data, it's internal data, it's market data. If you're so forward thinking in R&D, like you do have that too. You add that too, and you try to make the best informed bet as a business, right? I think the same thing could apply in any area. So I think the first is, it becomes a data management problem. It becomes a skill and internal knowledge, because a lot of that isn't anywhere except in people's heads. So how do you get them to engage with an AI model, to fine tune it, to have it be that clinical reasoner? This is wide open territory. There's no AI model that can do that now, but could there be? Maybe. I don't know. So I think that you'll see bets in the space. That universities. I was talking to Stanford not too long ago, who wanted to do something similar. Very similar. It's like, can you get the models? Can you fine tune them on enough of this type of data to be able to reason across it better than they currently can? Because they can't really, unless you really play with it, like it's not great. So yeah, I think there's got to be bets in the space. So yeah, I'm excited to see what everybody can do.
Sure. I think I can add a little bit of color to this on what we are seeing, right? So I feel that a lot of in silico simulation is going to get better and better, whether it is protein folding or whether it's trying to assess the probability of success, right? Probability of success for a drug depends widely on, what sort of area it is, what sort of drug it is, and it also depends a lot on the patient population and the diversity of the population, right? So there are many factors. While I don't think there is like almost like a predictor right now, I have seen targeted efforts where there is a lot of focus on developing a lot more. What does this protein look like? What does this antagonist or what does this particular gene therapy look like? And what was sort of the motion that a previously approved experiment went through, and what can be learned from that? Most times, the organizations have a lot of institutional knowledge that they would want to run this against and say, hey, these are the things that have worked in the past. These are the sort of data patterns that we have seen. And I think there are companies and there are academic institutions who are actually trying to build something that will avoid costly late phase three, phase four failures. Because at the end of the day, that's where the majority of the cost is, right? Every failed experiment, the last estimate was around $5 to $7 billion was the estimate of a major drug. So you can imagine that these organizations are placing very expensive bets and they want to improve the probability of success. So while there is no good answer right now, Pavita, I hope we provided some color to the person asking the question that this is work in progress, but there is hope because at the end of the day, there are very few things that we have actually done for the first time. There's a lot that we can actually gather from the learning from previous experiments.
Thank you, Karen. And Troy, I think you might have had something to add.
Yeah, thanks, Pavita. I think Scott and Kieran covered it really well. So we can go to the next question if there is one, or
Okay.
however you'd like to take it.
Thank you. Yeah, so you did touch on cybersecurity. I think one of the questions was still about just in terms of when you're trying to get started in an organization, how do you work with management and talk about data management and ensure quality, trust, reliability, and so on. So cybersecurity is part of that, but part of it is also getting people to agree to move forward within the organization. So any last thoughts on that?
I mean, I think that this one, it's a lot what Semi said, that due diligence is critical. And so you need to understand what the company you're proposing to work with has as a technology, like really, really understand it. And that means that we need to have people internally in our companies who speak the same language, who literally can talk the tech talk and understand licenses, agreements, the type of data involved, the type of tools, the algorithms. But also, I think that there's always like, okay, so what next? Because there's many technologies that might look really interesting and exciting for an experiment, but you have to be able to think about as an investment, where would this take us? Is this something that we would want to scale internally if it worked? And is this company a company that could help us scale? Or are they really experimental and maybe a little too early, a little too small to think about how they could scale to meet the needs of a Fortune 50 corporation? And so we have to look at it from all angles to think about where it could lead, not only what we could do in the short term.
Thanks so much, Troy. So we are just about out of time. Thank you all, Kieran, Simi, Scott, and Troy, for a really lively discussion and for sharing so many great examples. This is so helpful to our audience here. It was very informative, and I think we all learned something new today. So if we didn't get to any questions, we will circle back after the program, and a recording of the session will be shared with the attendees of this webinar. So in the meantime, we hope you can check out our new AI and digital health resource page, which features some useful tools for various parties. And you can find it by going to bionj.org and clicking on the resources tab. We are also excited about our BioNJ's AI and Digital Health Day, and we hope you'll save the date. This event will take place on November 18th at Stevens Institute of Technology in Hoboken, and we have a full day program planned. Registration will open early in October, so we hope to see many of you there in person, and hopefully this event has given you an idea of some of the content that could be really useful to many of our members. Please visit www.bionj.org for our full calendar of events. And also, if you aren't a BioNJ member yet, you can contact Sherry and Danielle to learn more about the benefits of membership. And their contact information is on the screen now. We hope that you'll reach out. And finally, before you sign off, please take a second to scan the QR code on the screen to take our short program evaluation form. Your feedback is very important to us, and we appreciate any suggestions you may have. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.